Group of the government structure work group. The main purpose we are chartered with is coming back with a recommendation as to which positions the council will confer after being appointed by the mayor. And I think this list, which is attached, Jill, we just got started.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
If you look at this, as I think most of you already have, there is a list of what positions are currently confirmed by the council under the current charter, and then what positions would be confirmed under the city attorney's proposed amendment as drafted. And our job is not to decide which is correct or not to propose a middle ground. Our job is to, our job is to report back and recommend a position that can be then consolidated with the government structure work group and then recommended to the full charter commission. And the charter commission would then hold public hearings. So now is not the time to hear from the public. We'll have that opportunity. The Charter Commission's rules require public hearings before any proposal is on the ballot. So why don't we just take some general discussion as to what people think, whether it should be current charter, city attorney's proposed amendment, somewhere in between, or something different. And then we'll see if we end up with some sort of consensus that we can report back.
I have a hopefully quick question.
Sure.
How was it done before the charter amendment? How were appointments done?
That's in the left-hand column here.
Oh, I thought this was our current one.
Yes.
Okay, before we voted, before the people of Minneapolis voted for the charter amendment.
Yes, this was the same way.
It's the same.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The government structure amendment didn't change the appointment process.
Right now, the Community Safety Commissioner and the City Operations Officer are confirmed, but it's confirmed pursuant to ordinance, not pursuant to charter. So presumably, and the city attorney's proposed amendment moves both of those positions into the confirmed by the council column. But otherwise, the list on the left is the list, even pre-executive mayor.
Well, wouldn't they still be the community safety commissioner and the city operations officer would be confirmed by the council because they are appointed by the mayor and that's in the charter? Isn't that right?
Yes. Yes. The charter has a provision before it talks about the appointment process. It says any position appointed by the mayor is subject to the council's consent.
Okay.
And the council actually has consented on both of those already.
Yes.
But the positions community safety commissioner and city operations officer aren't mentioned in the charter at all.
No, they're brand new.
Right.
Well, I have a, based on our last meeting where we talked a little bit about this. Mr. Carl was talking about the fact that the mayor was actually giving up appointing all of these people and was only appointing these two. And then these two would appoint everyone else. And then the city attorney suggested the fire and police be added in there. But I guess my thought on that is the mayor is the one who appoints the community safety commissioner as well as the city operations officer. And it would seem to me that the mayor would have really fairly significant sway and input into the decisions of who gets appointed as the director, the directors of these other issues, whereas currently, the city council has confirmation authority over all of them, and they would, other than the 4 we've talked about, they would lose that. And it seems to me that we had talked at the last meeting about maybe the positions that are more in the public. But I'm thinking, to some extent, I mean, depending on what your issue is as a public, as a citizen, all of these departments could be significantly, public facing. And I am just wondering what the problem would be with the mayor appointing all of them.
Anybody else?
Well, I think the problem with the mayor appointing all of them and then having city council confirm them is that you then have this thing where everybody seems to be accountable, and that's the way the system we had was.
But that can't be, because that has been changed by ordinance. That has been changed.
When you start appointing everyone, when everyone is being confirmed by the council and the mayor is making the appointments, you really haven't moved the ball forward on it.
Well, do you think the city council will have control over the community safety commissioner or the city operations officer?
Absolutely. Yep.
Why do you think that?
Because when you go through the appointment process, which I have never done, I have been appointed to boards and commissions, like this one. And but I have never been through the appointment process for a government job. But I think once you are making statements to the council, you're basically making commitments to them. And they are then, therefore, your boss again. I don't think you really have moved away from what the intent of the charter change was to be.
I don't think the mayor would agree with you that the community safety commissioner and the city operations officer fall under the purview of the boss of the city council. I think the mayor would say, these are mine. I am the head. As the Strong Mayor initiative was adopted, that was specifically the arguments that people made to get that adopted, to get the control of all of these people, instead of them having 13 bosses plus the mayor, to have one boss. And I think that would be the idea, but there's a big difference between having a boss and being confirmed, being actually, like the community safety commissioner and the city operations officer, having them go before the city council. I mean, I don't think either one of them was approved unanimously, but I think it was 11-2 maybe on both of them. I mean, it was very, very strong in favor of the appointments, and I don't see how that would be I don't think that gives the city council control of these folks' jobs in any way. I just think it gives them some input as to who the person is who's appointed to that position.
I'll just fall back on I have my own business now, but I used to be in corporate America. And when I would hire someone as a manager, I was a director of engineering. And when I would hire a manager, they would not interview, their people would not interview with me. I would put those managers in place, and they would make the hiring decisions that they thought were going to make them successful in terms of what the corporation was trying to achieve. And I think that when you have city council stepping in and doing that sort of interviewing process, you get away from that.
It's not really the interview, because the mayor is appointing. It's just merely the confirmation.
So what takes place in a confirmation? Is it similar to an appointment process?
The appointment process, basically, mayor,
Peter, can you talk a little?
I'm sorry. The mayor makes a nomination. Currently, he would say, I want to appoint this person as city attorney. So then it goes to the city council. City council, under their rules, takes it and they send it to a committee that might touch upon the main purview of whatever that position is. So it's in the case of the Commissioner of Public Safety, it might go to Public Safety Committee or whatever the current name for that committee is. And then they hold the public hearing. And the public hearing is where most of the issue arises with our appointments process, because then anybody can come in with any grievance or whatever they might have, and we have these really long and sometimes very, very uncomfortable public hearings, and then the council then debates about what, has been said by the public, and then they go ahead and then they make a decision. And many of those hearings are extremely unpleasant for the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
And if you you're a new charter commission member, but if you were to go back and look at the reports that we did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, as part of the government structure work group back then, and we explored this area, we had a number of former department heads come in and talked about what they thought about, one, the move to an executive mayor kind of system, and the current appointments process, and how difficult that was for them, and how they felt it limited the available pool of applicants for the city of Minneapolis, because that process has become, for many people, something that they just won't go through. It becomes very distasteful. And so that's one aspect of the appointment process, where if you were to, again, have a discussion with the current department heads that go through that, you'll find a lot of discomfort about that whole idea of that kind of public hearing appointment process.
So you're, what I think I'm hearing is that the appointment process and the confirmation process are pretty much one and the same.
Well, you start out, we always go through this in the city. The mayor nominates. He
That's
doesn't.
part of the appointment
That's
process.
step one.
That's step one.
Okay.
Step two.
Step two is
Refer to council.
Goes to the council. And then the council has to then vote and approve it. And that is the
Well, public hearing.
public hearing.
And, okay.
Council votes step forward.
Okay.
And after that, the mayor has to sign it.
Mhm.
And that's-
Then you're appointed.
That's the appointment process. So the
So
mayor.
it is.
So then the question really becomes what takes place during this confirmation process. That's really what the issue is.
Well, and then the problem is, as long as the council confirms, if you want to use that term, they set their process.
Right, it's not in the charter.
No, they set their process, so that's where the public hearing comes from.
Right.
And which is why, in a lot of ways, we're different than a lot of cities in the way our process works and
Sure.
the public nature of it. So that's one aspect of it. But to go back kind of to your original question is, say for the current public safety officer, his term runs until the mayor term ends. So the mayor will be up in 2025.
All these terms are now concurrent.
Yes, all of them are. And some of them, have been in the position longer than others, but, so they'll come up. And when they come up, assuming it's the same mayor, you just make that leap, it's the same mayor, and he wants to nominate the same people, how that person's relationship has been with the council in these intervening couple of years is going to have an impact on that confirmation process. So, for example, if they're not happy with the way that individual has handled certain things, they may be wanting to change ordinances, or they may be limiting the amount of, they have financial control. They might say, well, we're not going to give money for X, Y, and Z. So there's necessarily an interplay with that person to stay on the good side of these people who will confirm him. And that's where I think, we're talking about when you start to muddy some of the waters, who's in charge. Because yes, the mayor is in charge, but I still have to play with the legislators.
So I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, seeing that the people who we've elected to city council have an input on the people who are running the city. And here's where I do agree with you. When a process becomes so what's the word? Dysfunctional or uncomfortable, that you're losing valuable applicants because of it, then I think you look at changing the process, not necessarily taking away the appointment confirmation authority of the people who we've elected to run the city. And we have now decided that we want a strong mayor, so these people get appointed, and then they either get picked by these two folks, or they get picked by the mayor and then confirmed by the city council. And in either case, they could still be reporting, as the article states, their direct reports could still be the community safety officer or the city operations officer.
And they would be.
Yeah,
They still
not
would be.
just because the mayor appoints them and the city council confirms them, it doesn't mean that their boss can't be the community safety commissioner. It just seems to me, somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was talking about, here we now have this, maybe it was you, this diverse council, this council with so much diversity, and we should be using that to get other city leaders appointed in this process rather than leaving it up to, these two folks. That's just my,
You mentioned that maybe we ought to change the process then?
well, I know we can't do it, but the city council could do it. And I think the city council, given the, understanding the option that the problem is that we are losing people who just don't want to go through that because it is so onerous, that they may be very willing to say, all right, well, let's take a look at this.
They haven't been willing. I mean,
Commissioner Mackey's been waiting.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So Commissioner Doherty, I was exactly on that point at our last meeting, and I felt like the council members were going to want to have some say as the new structure has redesigned. And as I thought through it over the last couple of weeks, I look at this listing here and look at who, since I worked in neighborhoods for 30 years, over 30 years, who has the most interface and who doesn't, and who is internal operations and who, I mean, everybody has interface, but some have more interface, like the police commissioner, like the fire chief. And when I look at this list of what's been presented to us, the only one I now have a question about is the CPED director. Because the CPED director works with some of these other department heads on projects and developments and is interfaced with the community and the council people. So that's where I landed on coming to this meeting. If we are discussing the proposal that has come from the city attorney's office, I still question whether or not the CPED director should also go in front of the council. Just because they have to go in front of people all the time in their job with everything they do. So
I guess I
just wanted
would,
to put that on the
I guess I
table.
would like to see who, I'd like to just hear who the council members think that their constituents interact with, who they get calls from.
Yep, that would be good too.
I mean, it seems to me that you say the city council has not been willing to do that. I'm not so sure that this election hasn't said, this election said a number of big things to the city council, and one of the big things was get something done. Start making this city work. And every single one of those folks heard that. And every single one of those folks is up for election in 2025.
So is it possible, Peter, or Barry or Jill, to have like the president of the city council, like Andrea Jenkins? I suppose that will change before our next meeting, but it would be interesting to hear how the council feels on this.
I don't think it would be harmful at all in terms of our decision to just know what they think is in play, or what they think the balance, how their relations with their constituents, because that's what they're concerned about, their relationships with their constituents when it comes to issues that these folks are making decisions about.
And that may then clarify the whole question about the process that you bring up, changing the process versus the appointments or not, and having that conversation.
Mhm.
I would just point out that I think this list on the left is partly an accident of history. It's not like anybody intentionally sat down and said, these are the ones that should be charter offices and these are the ones that shouldn't be. It's basically, in the old days, any department became a charter department. And more recently, departments that are created were under the city coordinator, so not a charter department. So I don't think we should say that this is the magic list. No.
Well, it's who was appointed by the mayor prior to this, I guess.
These were
Yeah.
appointed by the mayor prior.
Right.
But the reason they're appointed by the mayor is because they were a charter department. And
That's a chicken and the egg kind of
right,
thing.
right. So we could give it a fresh look. We don't have to say, oh, X, Y, Z is on this list and X, Y, Z is not.
Right.
For me, I think one of my belief is if you talk to certain council members that, I'm sorry, I believe that if you talk to certain council members, this list is too small of the people that they want to appoint, or want they have the ability to weigh in on. I think they also want to go into some of the deputy directors under chief operations officer and other positions. I think their view is they have lost power to give them structure.
Mhm.
And so a way to regain some of that power is to have more control in this appointment nomination process. So you'll have a number of, depending on who you ask to come,
Yeah.
you would have some that I think this list is too small, and others that would say, if the city attorney proposes is a good idea.
Well, I would think that, they could want every single member of the city's employment to run by them, but the fact of the matter is the only ones under the charter who they have a right and an obligation to confirm are the ones who are appointed by the mayor. If they're not appointed by the mayor, then we don't have anything to talk about.
And looking at comparable jurisdictions, St. Paul, for example, I think confirms everybody, like 20 people.
The mayor appoints all
The
of them.
mayor appoints and they're all confirmed by the council.
Mhm.
Duluth, I think, is the other end of the spectrum.
They have one city administrator and attorney.
Yeah, so they just have two. And in comparable jurisdictions that we've looked at, it does seem that there's not a consensus.
Yeah. I think that, who put together that really cool sheet that we got before our joint meeting that really talked about this, and it talked about many other jurisdictions? Who was it? Was that you?
Maybe.
Was it the word chart in terms of the different department heads? Like the
Yeah, it
different
was
colors?
like 104 pages. And we got it, and part of the end of that was talking about different locations, like the city of St. Paul, Portland, Oregon, all of those. And that was very informative to me,
I
because
think that's
it's
the
exactly
government-
what you
The
said.
government structure report.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
And
that-
Barry, that's exactly what my take on it was, is wow, this is all over the board.
Right.
So there isn't, I don't think there is but the closest one to us is obviously St. Paul, which also has a strong mayor system. And so I don't think necessarily that this would take away from the mayor's prerogatives to appoint. It would just continue what's been happening. But I agree. It seems to me that it would be necessitated by a workout of something. Something should change in terms of making this process less distasteful to everyone involved.
I mentioned this last time, I was just going to reiterate that, A, I don't know that the attorneys would want this saying the city attorney proposes. They did not. This reflects what the mayor and council agreed to. They've already agreed to that structure. This is reflecting the government structure omnibus ordinance that the mayor and council adopted. So we were saying you should now amend the charter to align with your ordinance that you adopted. So the city attorney just tried to comport the charter to the code. They didn't recommend these. The only thing the city attorneys recommended, based on talks with the mayor and the council members, is you probably want to get the fire and police chiefs back in, because they were out under the ordinance. And given the sensitivity of those two high-profile positions, the attorneys said you should consider maybe that the mayor and council should touch those two. But this middle column is really reflecting the ordinance that the mayor and council adopted, not something the attorney just dreamed up, number one. Number two, I said this last time, the mayor's intention, which was reflected in the ordinance, I saw, his staff person's here and can maybe speak more to it, was that there should be less politics in the permanent administration. So you may not remember this colored org chart that we did, and the idea was that the mayor and council would touch these 3 orange boxes. And those would then change when the mayor's administration changed, the cabinet. This is basically the mayor's cabinet. So when the mayor changes, those 3 orange boxes will change, but all of these 25 departments down below wouldn't necessarily have leadership changes just because there was a new mayor. That there'd be some continuity and more of a professional, they stay. The 25 departments and that administration stays, and then the mayor has the 3 orange boxes, which would be the cabinet, that they could come and go. And that was what justified the mayor saying, I'm giving up appointing all of these boxes, which then took it out of council. If the mayor didn't do it, the council would do it.
So Casey, to your point, if the city assessor office became vacant tomorrow and was filled under ordinance, that would be appointed by the city operations office.
That's what we agreed to if we changed the charter. So when the mayor and the council went down this path of changing the ordinance, they said at some future date, when we conform the charter to the ordinance, that's how that would work. And it's written to say that as long as the charter is not changed, the mayor must appoint the next city assessor. But at some point when the charter's changed, then the mayor would not appoint the city assessor.
I'm not so sure that I have no reason to think that none of, that all of that isn't true, but it seems to me from just the short reaction we had from the city council members who looked at particularly this article, Article 7, said, I don't know about this. This doesn't...
I think Mr. Ginder said to you, that's a perception of power.
Yeah.
So they used to appoint 10 of 20. This would say they're limited to 3 out of 25.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a perception of, that's a loss of our touch on confirming those departments.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, I would suggest, as I said to you last time, a loss by the mayor. So you're saying that these 3 orange boxes are where we're going to focus the political touch. And below that will be a line of people, the public works director, as an example, the largest department we have. 1/4 of the entire budget goes to that one department.
Right.
That person would not be in the political realm of coming and going when the mayor comes and goes. Could be.
And prior to this strong mayor initiative passing, was that how it worked? The public director or the public works director changed when the mayor changed?
Sometimes, but not always. It was always a potential. I'll tell you the one that always changed with the mayor was the city coordinator. Always. New mayor, new coordinator, often new attorney.
Yeah.
And that's,
Well, that would make more sense.
that makes sense, right? Those orange boxes.
Sure.
When the new mayor came in, they brought their own attorney, they brought their own coordinator. We didn't have a,
Police chief would change.
police chief often changed,
Versus the mayor.
right?
Mayor would come in, new police chief.
Well, not always, because the police chief had a 3-year term.
Yes, which caused issues, but
That was-
but it was a
By
matter of
design.
time.
Yeah,
It was a matter of time before the police chief would change generally.
Right.
It's important to have a
Oh, I was just going to ask for clarification. So this is what the mayor and council agreed upon in ordinance.
That's what the ordinance says.
That's what the ordinance says.
And as we gather to say, oh, let's take a look at this, maybe the council's ears kind of perk up and say, oh, yeah, we lost power. So yeah, Peter Ginder's nodding. So we could theoretically say, you, the mayor and the council already agreed on this. We like the city attorney's recommendation to include the fire chief. This is what we would recommend happen, because it's not very often that the mayor and council agree on anything.
Well, I'm wondering if they didn't agree on this to get this thus far, knowing, excuse me, knowing that another whole discussion of it would happen when the charter actually got amended. It was kind of like, okay, this can go forward now, but we know we're going to be talking about this again.
I kind of don't know.
Well, it
So-
seemed that way in our joint meeting.
So question, two things that I wanted to say, but my question, being new to the process, once we have a recommendation, what role in the approval of that recommendation does the city council have? Is this another opportunity for them to weigh in? Or is that a foregone opportunity, given that there's been this agreement?
Oh, no, in order to change, well,
In order to change the charter, if the charter commission puts forward a proposal, that's what goes on the ballot. And it doesn't matter whether the council is for it or against it.
well, it goes to
Okay,
the
so-
council first, and if the council unanimously approves it,
No, you're thinking of ordinance.
Okay.
This body, the charter commission, not this work group. The charter has the ability to put a question on the ballot, council can't stop it. The council can adopt by ordinance if this body, the charter commission, agrees that the ordinance is the way to do the amendment. They serve as a check on each other.
right, so if we come up with the magic potion here that the charter commission agrees with and the city council unanimously agrees with.
They don't have
They
to
don't.
agree to your recommendation at all.
But if they did,
But if they did,
but if all of us did, then it would not have to go on the ballot.
correct, it could go by ordinance.
As we discussed, I
In the
think,
mayor.
yeah,
Yeah.
and us.
Yeah, yeah.
As we discussed briefly at our last meeting, or as I did, I don't think there's a realistic chance of getting a unanimous vote on the city council for this, or whichever version we put forward.
Did you see they got a unanimous vote on the mayor's budget after all those amendments? I
That's
mean,
because they had all those amendments, and they were able to drag it out.
well, they were able to work with the mayor and actually agree. I mean, he's going to sign it, or he did so. It's pretty amazing that they got, first of all, that the 13 of them unanimously agreed on anything. It was pretty amazing. And then that the mayor, it was something that the mayor was to me, I am just, as you will come to find out, I am the eternal optimist when it comes to mediations and settlements
I
and
am
agreements.
jealous. I wish I could hear from them.
So it sounds like you have a different experience or understanding of it.
Yes. And I think it stems from having, in the government structure work group, interviewing the department heads, interviewing former council presidents and former mayors, and interviewing the council. And I think the city has evolved such that when I hear the city council members in the election saying, oh, let's change things, pretty much I hear, let's stop things from being the way they are. There's been a lot of impediments by the city council. And there's a reason why there were so many budget amendments. The mayor went to each council member to ask for their input on the budget. What do they want? What do they think? Each of them. And to have that many amendments it seems to me that if the council and the mayor were more on the same page, those, I don't know how many multitudes of amendments could have been worked out at that point.
Without becoming amendments.
You're right, without becoming amendments and without causing the immense bureaucracy that most human beings don't see involved in working through those amendments.
But the amazing thing was they did it, and they did it quickly.
Mr. Carl.
So, freeform thought. I appreciate, I think last time you said we need to be careful about what this group can do and can't do. And so much of what I think the conversation keeps circling around is things that this group has no authority to touch.
Right.
There are a couple of them. Some are processes and rules of council and policies that the mayor and council have adopted throughout the internal operations of the city. That's outside the jurisdiction of this group. But the other thing is something that I think is even more important and yet difficult to name, and that's the relationships between human beings who are elected to 14 seats.
Yes.
And I will say that it's on everyone's mind between the mayor and the council that they need to do a better job of building their own relationships. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Commissioner. I'm hopeful too, that some of those relationships can build and solidify and be productive and positive, both for the enterprise, but more importantly for the community that the enterprise is supposed to serve. I think it's in everyone's interest, and I think that by and large, there is agreement that that outcome is necessary. How you get from point A to point B is a different story, and there's probably 14 perspectives of how to get there, but we're working very hard during this transition to help support all 14 of those elected officials to find some common ground. That is an issue that none of us in this room and none of the departments and none of the people on this page can help. We can support, we can help, but that's really between the 14 of them to find some common ground that forms positive work relationships in an elected piece. And one of the things we've talked about as we think about that is we talk about the mayor and council as a team.
Yes.
And that's not a good analogy. They're not a team. They run as individuals, they have their own platforms, they have their own boards, they have their own perspectives, they have their own bases, and yet they do need to perform like a team or have certain team characteristics. And so to the extent that the charter, as the Constitution, can provide some structure to a governing body, which is the mayor and the council together, I think that's helpful. That's why I keep saying to you, I think that what the mayor and council designed, knowingly or not, those who voted for the government structure under this ordinance, was a structure that really represented sort of a three-legged stool, or a triangle, if you will. The mayor, the chief executive, the council, the legislative, and the professional staff, the bureaucracy. And the way to protect the bureaucracy was to minimize both, not only the council, but also the mayor, right? We focus on council, but we also didn't want the mayor coming in here and changing all 25 department heads every 4 years, right? This isn't just looking at the current mayor and the occupant of the office. It's 10 years out, who's mayor? 10 years out, who holds these seats? How much do you want them touching the department heads? And the plan that was adopted sort of recognized 3 separate groups, if you will, that come together to run the city.
That is assuming, I'm sorry, that is assuming that the mayor is not going to have as much input and control over naming these folks as I tend to think he will, given the fact that it's his appointments who are the namers.
Sure.
And I guess my question from where to go from here is, what would be the harm of getting the city council president or vice president or whatever committee they have assigned this to? Because I know they were quite concerned over this particular article in our joint meeting, to get a small group together to talk about what.
I don't think there is a representative of that group, Commissioner. You'd have to have all 13, and you could do that. We've done that before.
First, a minor question. The Director of Emergency Management, I think there's a state law that requires that that person be confirmed by council?
No, it's a state law that it has to be appointed by the mayor.
Appointed by the mayor, so they're.
And then our charter kicks in and says, well, if the mayor appointed them, the council must confirm them.
Okay, so.
So if there weren't, if there
That
weren't
would
the
be
charter.
true.
So, yeah, EMS is on here only because of the state law, which said the mayor had to appoint it. And then when it went into our process, that means the council had to
Council.
approve it. So I was interim city attorney for the last appointment, and the appointee didn't want to go through council and didn't believe he had to. And I said, it's great, because this is what the statute says, but it now puts us into our system, which now says we have to go.
And the draft proposal that the city attorney drafted does not take the director of emergency management out of that.
Well, it does if we pass all the
Special laws.
the special law.
Yeah, the law would have.
Get rid of all the special laws relating to employment, then it does, then it goes away. So the special laws relating to employment also touch on this.
In the article, does it talk specifically about who appoints the director of emergency management?
In
Is it
the-
the?
In the article.
Yeah, I mean, in the article,
No,
it doesn't.
no. There's a state law that says the mayor of every city must appoint a manager of emergency, or manager
right.
of executive service, whatever it is, emergency management.
So if that law gets changed,
We're a charter city. We would charter out of that and say,
Right.
we're going to have this be under our community safety commissioner.
okay, it would go to the community center.
So what I would suggest we do is invite the council, anybody who wants to show up, come and talk about this, and also representatives of the mayor's office. There's a representative here now, but I don't want to put him on the spot. But hear what they have to say.
Could we put forth a list of questions so it's perhaps a facilitated discussion?
We could. Yeah, I don't want it to be half an hour speeches by council.
Facilitated with the time limit, we can manage that.
I guess giving them an issue, framing the issue of what we would like to discuss with them, limiting it, would help too.
And coming back to that.
Keep
Because
bringing it back.
I don't know that they would, we can perfectly well say that.
Yeah, and they could take it wherever they want. But we could bring it back too.
And
And they can self-select who wants to come and who doesn't.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, who was it who talked about this? Was it Elliot Page?
Yes.
Maybe even self-select a couple of speakers and other people listen. I don't know if that would go or not, but
Well, there are probably as many different views on the council as there are council
maybe
members.
not so much.
Yeah,
Moving forward.
I think you'd have to ask each of them to say, there isn't really one person who speaks for council.
So is that, so not even like the council president?
Only if the council is empowered, the council president to speak for them.
But I mean, if there were differing views, couldn't a council president present all the views?
Oh, boy.
I don't know.
I'm just wondering, can the committee even do that, or does it have to be a joint meeting of the council and the charter again?
We'd have to, it would at least be a meeting of the council.
I think we could meet with this group and the council. I don't think we have to pull all of our people.
Chair Ginder, what do you think about whether that should be this group, whether that should be the government structure work group as a whole, or the entire charter commission?
Sure, I think it's probably a more valuable exercise. If it's in the largest group. I'm sorry, I think it's a more valuable exercise if it's in front of the largest group, which would be the full charter commission, and that might be further down the line than where we are right now. After this has gone through with some preliminary thoughts, and this will go to the government structure, same with everything else, and then unless part of this goes to what you want to do, Chair, as far as what's the recommendation that you anticipate coming out of this committee, would be the only argument for saying, did somebody show up to the smaller work group as they will make a recommendation to the committee. to the larger group. So it's just kind of
And I know that we don't have control over how things are run, but I have, worked long enough to see things work really well together under previous administrations and current, depending what the issues are. So, and usually that happens when you have more communication than less, and hear different points of view face to face. And so I would support listening to what the council members have to say, and people from the mayor's office. Kind of a big deal. And, with the new year coming, the dynamics that we had last year are gonna be different. There's different people elected to the council now. So also thinking about being pragmatic about what is our process going forward, knowing that, to try to hit it and discuss it early, rather than putting a bunch of work in and having it change 6 months down the line.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think one of the important things that happened during the election, during the strong mayor initiative election, was the documentation that went out in support of that initiative, which talked about talking to so many department heads and so many workers. I think not only did that sway the voters, but I think the council looked at that and said, I don't know that, I am not sure that the council realized the extent of the pain that they were putting people through who were getting through this process. It was just kind of like, whoa, because that was very interesting to read, all of that when that came through.
Well, and Commissioner Doherty, maybe that's a question asked when we have him here. Do you?
Are you aware?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure this out process-wise. That would be a meeting of the full charter commission. And it would cover not only things that come out of this work group, but anything that comes out of the language review work group. But I'm not sure that anything in the language review work group would rise to the level of council wanting to give testimony.
No, I don't believe so.
Possibly the question on Article 10, which is the boards and commissions piece,
I think that's been referred to
the amendment
the
review.
amendment review.
But if you're having a full meeting of the Charter Commission, since that's under consideration, and I know that the council hasn't weighed in on that. So if you're asking about those things, what I remember from the joint meeting were two things that grabbed my attention were this issue in Article 8, and then the new Article 10.
I don't know that we need to take both of those at the same meeting, though, because I don't think anybody wants to. It would be nice to be able to talk in depth about one of these issues without a time constraint and thinking, oh my gosh, we have another.
I don't think that the amendment review committee is on the same timetable that we are necessarily. And we're trying to produce something that can go on the ballot in 2024.
Right.
And they might take longer because they might have research they want to do to see how other cities have structured their ethics boards and stuff.
Right.
So that might be a 2025 event
Right.
if it moves forward at all. It seems to me that we don't necessarily have to have our own recommendation at this point. I mean, this is going to be decided by the full charter commission anyway. This is an important enough issue that whatever we recommend will not just that many votes on the charter commission. The way I would suggest we do it is just to say, here's the current charter. This is what the draft proposes that's consistent with the government structure ordinance. Where do you come out on it, council members? Mayor?
I do think that it's important to have continuity in operations. And having, anytime you have a lot of movement and uncertainty over time, you end up with, quite frankly, a mess. You end up with things that don't get handled well. You don't get the longevity of, or the advantage of the long view. and decisions that are being made. Decisions are made from expediency as opposed to really thinking about what is important for the masses in the long term. And so going back to the org chart that you showed and limiting the number of politically appointed positions at the operations level, I think is important. Because of that, the nature of that. As we look at the school board, we've got superintendents and such that are coming and going, and the school system is in a shambles. I mean, we don't need that here in the city. I mean, we've got enough issues that we have to buoy up. Those are my thoughts.
In the school board, only 27%.
And there you go. But there's a lot of movement over the past.
Yeah.
I've been here for 30 years. I mean, yeah.
But I mean, if it was under that.
We should also ask how long it takes. I don't know this, but we had a former commissioner who was in the Carter administration who could probably tell us. When you have a city where the mayor makes all the department head appointments and a new mayor gets elected, it's usually months before all the departments are appointed. There's a long gap of holdovers and interims for the new mayor to get up.
But is that what has happened in the past year? Because
Not here because we didn't have all that.
Right, we didn't have
But
all
when
of that.
25 are in St. Paul.
Right.
Right.
How many appointments did the mayor here make?
Half, 10 of 20.
10. Okay. So, but those weren't every time a mayor changed, like you said. It was
Not always, not always.
Yeah.
Terms
But there
were not
was.
necessarily
Current.
concurrent with the mayor's term
Right.
until this amendment.
Right.
And there are times when the mayor keeps people because he or she looks around, and these are
Professional.
professionals running professional departments, and they're doing well. It's not a political appointment. I don't change it.
Mhm.
And so the ones that usually change, and again, there's a contract issue, but in Minneapolis, of course, didn't change even city attorneys very often because the mayors would come in and they'd go, the city attorney is very competent professional, and they would leave them. And I worked for, in 35 years, 4 city attorneys.
Hmm.
So even though it's a very political position, they have done a job of selecting competent, professional people, and new mayors would come in, and they tend to catch them. Like St. Paul, you'll see every time there's a mayor change, there's a new city attorney. And so there are positions that, if you want to refer to them as a deep state, where they keep everything running. The city works because they have strong department heads and strong upper managers. That's why a city works.
Uh-huh.
And to the extent you can keep them non-politicized, the better off you are, so that, I mean, under this current system, city operations officer might come in and a new one, 2 years from a new one come in, and they will look around and say, hey, you know what, these people are all professionals doing their job, I'm not making any changes. Could be converse, say, you know what, I've got a whole new vision and we're going to change everything here. But reality is probably going to stay the same. You've got a finance director, you have this department, and they're doing a good job, you're going to come in and say, okay, I need people who know what they're doing.
And again, it's not the council who makes the appointments. You know, I mean, with the strong mayor position, it's the mayor who makes the appointments. All the council does is the confirmation, so.
You can't make an appointment without council confirmation. Commissioner.
But that's what I'm saying, is the.
So it's not a
they
true
don't-
statement, what you're saying. The mayor doesn't get to appoint if the council doesn't confirm.
Right, but if the mayor doesn't change these, okay, if the mayor comes in, new mayor comes in, does not change any of these, the council doesn't confirm anyone.
A new mayor would bring a new term, would bring new appointments.
And in the past, weren't they two-year
That's the other thing you
terms
did
have to
change.
reappoint?
One thing that did
Yeah,
change with this
yeah.
is it aligned those department heads to the mayor's term, because years ago, the mayor and council were elected to 2-year terms, and so the department heads were 2-year terms. And then the mayor and the council selfishly made themselves 4, but left the departments at 2.
Okay.
And so in the middle of the term, you had every department head up in 2-year increments.
Casey, can you point us, not right now, but point us to the provisions in the government structure ordinance which would contemplate the middle column here?
Yep, yep.
That would be great.
Just a final thing, I know that you mentioned the government structure work report in a 104-page document.
Yes.
There are also footnoted in there other reports that were prepared by our committee. And so when Commissioner Garcia referred to the hearings that we went through with department heads, former elected officials, there's a report summarizing that is referenced in that report. So if you go back to the 2021 agendas, if you dig deep enough, you will find those reports that were prepared by us, which you get the full flavor of what everybody said.
And I think that's what was publicized during the campaign.
Not those reports. Those
Well,
reports.
the information from those reports, summaries from it.
It's an interesting read.
Yeah.
Yes, very,
Understood.
very. It's actually, it is basically, we did them anonymously,
Mm.
but they're a first person, as close to a first person account
Mhm.
as you would have.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I believe since then, correct me if I'm wrong, all department heads have turned over except for 2. So I
Multiple times.
And some have turned over a few
Multiple
times.
Multiple.
So I think that's very telling.
Well, here's what I would suggest based on the discussions we've had, and that is that we recommend to the government structure work group and ultimately to the Charter Commission that the Charter Commission public hearings on this topic, and perhaps separately from the public hearing, invite council members and representatives of the mayor to address the entire Charter Commission on this issue. And therefore, at this point, we would not take a position on column A, column B, or column C. We would just say, here's current, here's draft amendment proposed, drafted by the city attorney's office, and we want to hear what you all think.
Yes.
And then we would take a position as a charter commission.
That makes sense.
Which may be,
Does that have to be a vote, or just everybody can?
I think if unless there's objection,
Will of the committee, will of the board.
yeah. Great.
We'll work on signing 3 or 4 dates when council is available and charter commission will be available. Probably would be in late January.
it would be great if we could get a good representation of council.
And it would, I would think the council mayor input would come before the public hearing, just in case that input clarified our views to some extent.
When you do that, typically, when you have a public hearing like that, what would you think, how many people would even be interested in this?
You know, during the pandemic, everything was remote. So
Yeah.
we would get potentially, the advantage of that is we potentially get people who didn't want to come downtown
Sure.
and testify. So we've had public hearings where we've had 50 people show up,
Huh.
and others where it's the usual suspects.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be interesting to get the perspective of these folks on the ordinance that they agreed to.
And I would like to see the specifics of the ordinance that contemplate the middle column, and I'll circulate that when Casey gets it to everybody.
So we need to draft the questions that we would ask.
I think that's a good idea for the council mayor to ask.
So should we do that now, or should we wait until after we receive
Let's
the
look at the
ordinance?
ordinance.
I think we should look at the ordinance first.
So we'll have another meeting after that.
We did that when we did all the other interviews, and so it was easy like when we interviewed cities, it was easy to compare across. So I think,
And if I remember right, I think you asked people to send questions and then you compiled them and then we kind of broke them down a little bit, didn't you?
is that how?
I think so. I think you got several and then landed on a few.
Probably because many of us would have the same,
Exactly.
same questions.
But I remember you asked for them. Maybe it's because I
I
remember.
don't remember
but
yesterday's.
I think you asked for them.
But I think it would be either this group or the government structure work group that would be drafting those questions.
If we are calling,
Oh, I was gonna say they could be both.
if we are calling the meeting, then we would be the ones to finalize whatever questions
It
come in.
would be
for
a
action.
charter commission meeting, a full charter.
It would,
commission.
okay, okay. And so, what we are calling for that meeting with the full charter.
We are
commission.
recommending that meeting to the charter commission. It will be on the charter commission's January agenda.
Would we open that up to, in terms of questions that the full charter commission had for the mayor and the council members?
I think we would do as Co-Chair Garcia suggested, like we did when we took testimony, we would ask specific questions and not permit, follow-ups or individual commissioners.
But in terms of requesting to have Chairman Garcia look through those questions, would we request them just from us or from the full charter commission?
In the full charter commission.
Just remind you, the next meeting with full charter commission is January 3rd, so we'll put that together for January 3rd.
So again, the recommendation, to be clear, is that we would recommend through the government structure work group to the charter commission, that the charter commission hold a joint meeting with council and mayor to address specific questions that we will create in advance of that meeting, and further recommend that we hold a public hearing after that meeting with council and mayor.
Could we ask the clerk's office to send us the LINS number for the report from the government structure work group last time? Thank you.
Do you have it in front of your book? I think we're done.
It was probably in my car that was carjacked.
There being no further business to come before us, we are.